Thank you. Ms. Bonamici, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair Castor. Thank you to all of our witnesses. We know that the climate crisis will disproportionately affect the health and well-being of low-income communities, people of color, children, and older adults. We have a responsibility to take action to address that. Ms. McCarthy, during your tenure at the Environmental Protection Agency, the social cost of carbon was a foundation of important environmental regulations, including the Clean Power Plan. We had many conversations about that in the Science, Space, and Technology Committee over the years. The social cost of carbon has been used to express the dollar value or cost of climate damage caused by 1 ton of carbon dioxide, and it actually reflects the socioeconomic and ecosystem damages from emissions and helps us translate through the long-term consequences into present value. Unfortunately, in 2017, President Trump signed an executive order disbanding the interagency working group on the social cost of carbon. I'm concerned that the absence of that analysis is being used to justify or rationalize harmful regulatory decisions. And I know the Natural Resources Defense Council released a report titled Bitter Pill, the High Health Costs of Climate Change. And that report recommended examining how the social cost of carbon could be updated. So beyond reinstating the interagency working group, how should Congress incentivize the reinstatement of an accurate social cost of carbon, and how can we support federal agencies in better quantifying the health damages in a renewed social cost of carbon analysis?
Well, first of all, thank you for the question. We all know that the challenge of federal agencies is to look at all of the costs and benefits of the actions that it takes. Clearly, the social cost of carbon was established to allow us to understand the full breadth of consequences of the carbon emissions that are fueling climate change and how we can reduce those and account for those in decision making. And you're right, this administration has decided to move away from looking at the full cost. But I would also caution you to think about that fundamentally stop looking at climate change, period. Not just the full breadth of social consequences with our changing climate. And to me, that is like a bank statement where you only look at, deposits and not withdrawals. And I think that we need to go back and take a look at this. I do know that people outside of the government continue to look at updates on the social cost of carbon because I think we seriously underestimated those costs. And so I think there'll be many people fully prepared to both challenge rules that don't consider climate change every step of the way, including actions and accounting for the broad social cost.
Thank you.
And RDC is one of those.
Right. Right, and I appreciate the panel today helping to highlight that issue. I want to get to Mr. Rodriguez quickly. Your testimony, you shared those powerful stories. Thank you so much of the farm workers who felt pressure to keep working in harmful conditions. And as a member of the Education and Labor Committee, I'm certainly pleased to support Congresswoman Chu's bill to adopt a final standard on the prevention of occupational exposure to excessive heat. What additional steps can Congress take to safeguard outdoor workers from heat-related illnesses and death and provide workers with appropriate remedies in the event their rights are violated?
For me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. Well, thank you again for the question. Congresswoman Judy Chu, in my understanding at least, has already introduced legislation here in Congress.
Right, I'm proud to co-sponsor that, yeah.
Oh, fantastic. So, we're very hopeful that there's going to be support for that legislation. And I was mentioning earlier that in negotiations this past year around the immigration bill for farm workers, HB 5038, we were actually there sitting down with the agricultural industry, with the leaders throughout the nation, and we discussed this particular issue with them. And I think all of them voluntarily agreed that this is an issue that we don't have to really look further than what's already transpired and what's taken place, and we included that actually in the legislation. So we're of the mind that the agricultural industry has really recognized the importance of this, and we should all come together at this particular point with Congresswoman Judy Chu's and your bill and to be able to really pass that legislation and get
I
that.
hope so. I represent a district in Oregon, your neighbor to the north from California, and I know how important our agriculture community is, and the workers absolutely need to have that protection. One more quick question for Ms. McCarthy, harmful algal blooms you mentioned. We know that's a problem across the country, coastal communities as well as Great Lakes, rivers, streams. The EPA lacks an authorization or adequate appropriations to respond to that. So what resources does the EPA need to adequately respond to the health threats posed by algal blooms, particularly in terms of access to safe and clean drinking water?
It needs a couple of things. One is it needs resources to be able to continue to track and make these harmful algal blooms better visible to people. So transparency is going to be important. But the EPA does have some authority here. Unfortunately, the waters of the U.S., or that's not what it's called anymore, but anyways, whatever was just finalized, which looks at what waters are protected, it really has cut the legs out of the ability to be able to look at some of the waters and streams and wetlands that are important to protect that would eliminate some of the sources of contamination that are causing harmful algal blooms. And let's just very quickly remind ourselves that this isn't just about keeping water swimmable and fishable. This is directly about drinking water.
Absolutely.
Because harmful algal blooms created the cyanotoxins that shut down an entire city of Toledo for a 4-day stretch. And we need to remind ourselves that these are issues that are bad for our economies, but fundamentally threaten our drinking water.
Thank you.
if
And I
we
see my
don't
time is long expired. I yield back. My apologies.
Thank you.